Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd family a part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. Today I'm going to be previewing a little bit about the college football conference championship games coming up tonight. But before I get into that, let me quickly say I've got a shout out coming up at the end of the video. Please stay tuned for that. But tonight we have the Pac-12 championship game, which features the 10-2 Oregon Ducks and the 9-3 Utah Utes. And I just so happened to see the point spread for this game on the bottom of the screen this morning as I was waking up watching some sports highlights. And it's amazing that these two teams played just a couple of short weeks ago, and Utah won 38-7, but tonight they're only a 2.5 point favorite. So you would think the way they just dominated Oregon that it would be a little bit more than 2.5 points, but that is the point spread as of this morning, so it probably won't change before the game tonight. Now, Oregon on the regular season lost to Utah, but they also lost to Stanford, and that's the loss right now that hurts them, because otherwise, if they could win tonight, they would have a really good chance and probably would make the playoffs. But not only was it a bad loss, it was even worse because of the fact Stanford was awful this year. I mean, flat out terrible. They used to be a good team under David Shaw, but the past 5 or 6 years, they have just increasingly got worse every year. So that was a bad loss for Oregon. Now, Utah's 9-3, but they lost to BYU, who finished ranked. And they lost to San Diego State, who finished ranked. And they lost to Oregon State, who was a decent team. They weren't great, but they were at least a winning team. So their losses were a lot better. But their last loss came to Oregon State on October 23rd. So their last 5 games of the regular season, they were a completely different team. So if you ask me right now who I picked to win the game tonight, I would say Utah, just because they played a couple of weeks ago and Utah won, and they won handily. And I think Oregon's coach, Mario Cristobal, is a great recruiter, but the man can't coach. So I just don't think you're going to play a team like Utah and get beat that bad, and you're going to motivate your team just a couple of weeks later to beat them. I just don't see it, so I will pick Utah in that game. And also tonight we have the Conference USA Championship game, which has the Hilltoppers of Western Kentucky coming in with an 8-4 record, going up against the 11-1 Utsa Roadrunners. Now, I know a few times throughout the season I mentioned how I wanted UTSA to go undefeated to see how high they could get in the rankings, and they went undefeated until last week, and they just got mollywopped by North Texas, and I think they'll lose again tonight. I know they have the better record, but I think Western Kentucky is just a little bit better of a football team. Western Kentucky is coached by Tyson Helton, who was the offensive coordinator at Tennessee before taking the head coaching gig at Western Kentucky. Should be 2 good games tonight. Any thoughts on the games tonight, please feel free to let me know. And I was going to talk a little bit about the Mlb Lockout, but in reality, when there's a lockout, there's nothing to talk about because you can't do anything. You can't sign free agents. You can't release anybody. You can't trade anybody. So there's nothing to talk about because there's nothing going on. But I will say that the lockout started at exactly midnight Thursday morning because it ended the previous lockout at 11:59 and 59 seconds. So the lockout officially started at midnight yesterday morning. And a couple of the big things that the players and the commissioner cannot agree on is the players want it to be competitive all around the league, which is the way it should be. When you've got 30 teams, you should have everybody trying to compete to be good. But you have teams like the Tigers and the Marlins and the Orioles who just consistently seem like they're content with sucking. They don't make no attempt to sign anybody worth a darn. They don't make no attempt to trade for anybody worth a darn. They don't draft anybody worth a darn. And that upsets, the players from the other teams because those markets get killed in the ratings because when their teams are on, nobody watches because they know what the outcome is going to be most nights. So they want to have not necessarily a salary cap, but at least they want the teams to have to spend a certain amount of money so it looks like you're trying to compete, because that makes the game better. So to me, that makes sense. And the other big thing is the commissioner wants to shorten the regular season but expand the playoffs, which is bad because Major League Baseball is the one sport where you have to have a good season and you have to be good to make the playoffs. It's not like basketball and football where you can just, play around 500 all year long and then go to the playoffs. You have to have at least a winning record by, 8, 9, 10 games in baseball most years to make the playoffs. So you play a 6-month regular season and you feel like you accomplished something because you made the playoffs. If you expand the playoffs, which the commissioner wants to do just to make more markets watch the playoffs, so he's looking at it from that perspective. But if you expand the playoffs from the players' perspective, is you're making us play 6 months for what? If we're pretty much going to, just pedal around 500 and go to the playoffs, why have the regular season last so long? There's no point in it. You're watering down the regular season to make us play every day for 6 months and then say, well, you know what? You finished with 75 wins and 87 losses, but you're going to the playoffs. So what's the point in the regular season? You could cut it a lot shorter if basically half your teams are going to the playoffs. And it also hurts the players who are wanting to get bigger contracts, because a lot of times teams look at it as, where you came from. Were they competitive? Were they a playoff team? But if everybody's going to the playoffs, well, then every single player is worth the same amount of money, because no matter who you played for, you're in the playoffs. But a lot of times these teams look at, if you're a free agent winning a contract, is did you make your team better? And did your team go to the playoffs? Were you the reason why they went to the playoffs? But if everybody's going, what's the point? So the players don't see no reason to shorten the regular season just to expand the playoffs. So that's a couple of things that the players and the commissioner cannot agree on. And there has been a few free agents that have already signed contracts before the lockout started, like Javier Baez and Mr. Seager, who was previously with the Dodgers. I may talk about that coming up sometime here in the next couple of weeks. My shout out today goes out to my man Richie, who lives in Clemson, and of course he is a Tiger fan. He said he's all in all the time and wants me to say go Tigers. And Richie subscribed to the channel yesterday. And Richie, thank you so much for subscribing. Spread the word and help the channel continue to grow. And if you do so choose to comment on any video at any time in the comment section, you will be eligible for our 1,000 subscriber giveaway whenever we get to 1,000 subscribers. Let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. I saw a squirrel that couldn't make up his mind today. He was on the fence all day. And that wraps it up for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.